Hello and welcome to the Crate and Crowbar.
Wow.
A very special, spooky Crate and Crowbar episode. This is going out on Halloween, right?
Yeah.
Which is a Friday. Episode 66, not 6, just 66. Today is the 29th of October, but it will be Halloween when you listen to this. I'm Marsh Davis. And this room is haunted by the presences of Tom Francis.
Hello.
And Tom Senior.
Woo!
What have you guys been playing? Have you been playing anything spooky?
Yes. Well, spooky kind of suggests a kind of mild, maybe slightly disgruntled, state of mind. But I've been playing Alien Isolation, which is a far more intense form of fierce, bedwetting terror. And I finally finished it recently, and I think I really like it. But I can completely understand why people wouldn't like it, being as it is like so many survival horror games based around trial and error so much. And like when we talk about games, we always, it's like trial and error is just being an outright bad thing, really. It's like you can't really learn. You either get lucky or you don't, or you stumble across a situation where you couldn't have possibly known that would happen. And the next time it won't be the same, so you can't learn anything or progress. And Alien Isolation is kind of like that. Like if the alien happens to plop down in front of you, and there's nowhere particularly to hide, then your only manoeuvre is to back away very slowly while crouched, and it will either turn around or it won't, and then you're either fucked or you're not. And there's no real strategy to that scenario. It's just the alien has decided to come this way, so you're kind of boned, really. And perhaps some of the save system exacerbates that because it forces you sometimes to go through cutscenes over and over again, which is just a crime, really. It's just that shouldn't happen in games. If the cutscenes should at least be skippable in some way, but Alien Isolation does the thing where it traps exposition man behind some glass, and every time you walk past the glass, it has to talk at you for 5 minutes before you're allowed to go and get the key to the next machine.
The first time you're with another human being, there's a bit where they're like, oh, to open this door, we need to press 2 switches on opposite sides of this piece of unbreakable glass. Like, oh, well, you're dead.
Yep. Yeah, and it's interesting, Alien Isolation, it was released around the same time as The Evil Within, and they're two games which have very different approaches to horror, and one is very traditional, based of course on Resident Evil, being as it was created by the guy who made that series, and the other being this kind of systemic experiment with this dynamic monster that will hunt you through. And the weird thing about Alien Isolation is that towards the end it kind of sacrifices its dynamic elements and goes towards a kind of roller coaster kind of finale, which almost all horror games like Outlast and things like that emulate. And thought maybe we should discuss the merits and problems with both approaches, really.
Well, you've played both of them in the same game.
I have.
Which end of Alien Isolation is more effective?
Well, it's definitely the first end, I think. It's just because it does it better than any other game, and it's doing a thing that no other game has really attempted to that degree of fidelity and, complexity. Yeah. And I think it does succeed. For me, it succeeds anyway. And I just, critically, just seeing something new delights me more. But I think for people who maybe are less interested in the innovative side of that, maybe the game is not anywhere near as good. Like, if you're not, there to champion this new thing, that's a big part of the pleasure for me. Just watching the alien and watching it think and watching it move around just fills me with, look at the technology. It's so cool.
Yeah. I really like that. And, I really love the sort of idea of just having a relationship with something in the game that, it's going to be ongoing and it's going to be, you're both actively thinking about your situations and, are at opposing ends. But the fact that it wasn't scripted, so the alien actually roaming around isn't scripted, but the times when the alien appears, at least in some cases are, you're guaranteed not to encounter it in the first X, however long it is.
Not true, actually.
When in the intro when the plot's still unfolding.
It can turn, Tony Ellis, piece of game Tony Ellis was playing it, and if you make loads of noise and just don't give a shit, it can actually it's turned up in weird places for all of us before it's even supposed to be introduced for the first time, and it is always around, I think, and if you throw a party or something, it's going to come along.
Which button's that you have?
That's why, I believe.
The problem I had was that I was in the medical bit where you have to get someone's passcode and then their key card as well, and the alien shows up then seemingly every time and doesn't go away ever, seemingly. And the problem was that I was trying to sort of, I either kind of role play it, or I try and figure out what the designer is thinking and figure out, what to do in that situation. And if it's a scripted horror roller coaster type thing, then when, the monster shows up, I hide in the cupboard and I wait in the cupboard till the monster goes away and then I go and do the thing. But the alien never really goes away in that section. It'll like go up into the vents, but then it'll just come back down in 10 seconds. So the fact that it's in the vents isn't that much use to me because that just means it can come down from anywhere now. Whereas when it's actually walking around, I at least have some sense of where it is. And so I was locked in this weird thing where I'm like, the only smart thing to do here is just wait until it goes away. But I think it's never going to go away, and I think the reason it's never going to go away is because this is an alien section, and they've just decided the alien will be here until you complete your objective and move on. And so it was like, even though it was a dynamic thing, I was forced to deal with the artificiality a bit more than I would have been if it had been a scripted thing. Because in a scripted thing, probably the thing I would do as a player would be the same thing I'd do in real life, which is just hide and wait until it's totally gone, until you haven't heard it in half an hour, and then go out and get the key card or whatever. And the save system really changes everything in that game. It's the main reason I haven't got any further with it. I think I'm still at that section or maybe a bit beyond. And I'm just a complete absolutist about save stuff. If I have to repeat a large section of game, then just do it the same way, then I'm out. But it gives it such a weird, tension, not roller coaster, sine wave almost of, when it's been a long time since you last found a save station, then the tension is very high because you're going to lose a lot and you have to repeat a lot and it's going to be boring and annoying and you're going to hate it. But then once you just save, nothing matters at all. It's just like, alien party, hey, over here, asshole, woo, look at this. I wonder how someone's going to throw a noisemaker at its face. And so that kind of then shatters the whole mood. But you kind of have to do that because I tried to roleplay it at first, and, just kind of behave roughly as I actually would. And it meant as soon as I was actually in a situation where, shit, the alien's right in front of me, might turn around at any moment, I've got this noisemaker device that I want to throw. I didn't know how throwing worked properly, or I think I tried it once, but I didn't really have a sense of how it worked, so I ended up just throwing it at the railing directly in front of me, and it dropped at my feet, and then, started making noise, and I threw a flare on top of it, and lit myself up, and I'm like, I don't know how to use any of this shit, because I've never done it, because I don't get the chance to experiment in any kind of hostile situation. So instead I have to go and save, and then, after I've saved, go and find a hostile situation as quickly as possible, and then start throwing things around and see how they'll work. So the cost of experimenting is really, really high. So I ended up just never using those things because I don't trust them. I haven't really had an opportunity to try it.
Yeah, Andy he reviewed it for Gamer, got through the entire game without realising that you can use the stun prod on androids, and then they're weak to being beaten to death with the wrench. Right. So you didn't know that. You went through the entire 20-hour game, and that's because it leaves you no room at all to get used to the tools. And it just gives you tools without explaining what they are or what their capabilities are, which is a big problem. I enjoyed it a lot more as soon as I started using those tools more, like the smoke alarm. Started using the rewire tool to kind of fuck with the atmospheric conditions, which then fills halls full of smut, like gas.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. And it got a lot better. Also, the environments get a lot bigger, and the alien will hunt you dynamically through larger environments. So if it's in a room, you can feel safe for a while until you hear it again, and it is tracking you through a place rather than you being in a room with it, just like in a tiny mini sandbox thing that it does in the early game. But weirdly, going back to the Evil Within, which I really like actually, I'm about 4 or 5 hours into it, kind of made me appreciate designed spaces and occasional scripted elements. My favourite bit so far in the Evil Within is similar to one of my favourite bits of Resi 4, where it puts you into a village for the first time, and there are actually kind of multiple routes through this environment, and you can go up through various stairwells and travel from house to house and kind of go from room to room. And there are zombies in there, and you can decide to kind of do it stealthily, or you can go in shoot everyone. But there's kind of ammo conservation to it. But there's a degree of choice in a very, very designed environment that made it feel deliberately incredibly claustrophobic. And made it was an acceptable level of tension, basically. And it kind of, it paced that tension in a way that Alien Isolation can't. So I went through wide stretches of Alien Isolation where I was just walking at normal speed, completely upright through entire areas, because it was just not really looking where I was going. And so I was able to just coast through bits, and there was no attention to that. And the trouble is, as soon as you've done that a few times, it kind of lessens the threat of the alien, because it looks a bit daft. And I think it's just pure luck whether you end up getting that or not. And I think you have such a different experience with Alien Isolation depending on where you are on the bell curve of possible shit that can happen to you. So if you're one of the rare people where it just finds you every time, and it's always in front of the exit that you need, then you're going to have kind of a sucky experience like Tom, just waiting and waiting and waiting. Maybe you've run out of noisemakers. And if you're on the other end of the bell curve, then it's just kind of faffing around, having a party in a corner somewhere, and you're just kind of ghosting through it. I think largely it does well, but that will never happen in the Evil Within. In the Evil Within, like, every section has been designed and is bespoke, and you're going to get an intended experience from it, and it can be flawed and sometimes problematic, but it's kind of guaranteed entertainment in a way that Alien Isolation isn't. Because you go into a new bit of Alien Isolation and you don't know whether I'm in for just utter frustration or I'm in for an amazing dynamic experience. And I do love that curated experience Evil Within has, really.
Yeah, there's a kind of experience that is necessary in horror games, but also completely impossible. Like, the thing that they always try for, is just impossible for horror games to attain, which is the recreation of a horror film or horror film sequence where you are always nearly being captured or killed, but not quite, because obviously no horror film just ends with the protagonist dying after 2 minutes or something like that. And you can't really do that in games because you need to assure the player of a credible threat. And you can only do that by illustrating it via the player's death. But at the same time, the ideal playthrough is one in which the player never dies, but thinks he's constantly going to die. Or I don't know how, that's the ideal playthrough, but I don't know how you ever achieve that. How can you convince a player that they're under mortal peril 100% of the time, but never actually deliver the killing blow?
This is why I like just going all out on saves and just saying, yeah, save anyway, save as much as you like, because then you get to experience the hideous, horrible death. You get to see how awful it is, and then you get to go back and narrowly avoid it and know that
but
you're
again,
that close.
that's not delivering the intended experience of a horror film, because the threat of dying in a game is not the same as dying in a horror film or even in reality, by any means. And as you say, attached to that is the notion of irritation at having to play a section again. And I think those are just indelible problems, really. I don't know how you get around them. I think that action game / action movie, are closer together because you can put things on easy and you can have the same kind of experience that the action hero protagonist does, but you can never have the same experience that a horror movie protagonist does.
Yeah, you can't have the same one, but I think there are some advantages to the fact that you can see things that didn't happen. Like, games can have counterfactual scenes. They can have scenes where the main character dies and then you go back and you play it again. And so you get to show the alien killing Ripley and then carry on. And so Ripley always knows what that would be like. For you as the player, always know what getting skewered by the alien's tail is actually like. So that kind of can enhance the fear in one way.
Dramatic irony. Yeah, I think that's the kind of point I'm driving at. It's not that games are necessarily bad at being scary, but I don't think they do the same things as films. And maybe there are ways in which games could exacerbate their own scariness by doing things that only games can do. And I think Alien, actually, to its credit, does do some of those things. Like, the systemic nature of it is something which is, I don't know how what extent that is part of its fear, because I think at some point you begin to appreciate it as like an AI entity, and then that disassociates it from this kind of, unknowable space peril.
It's interesting, makes me think of PT, again, which I had a sense that I was under awful peril, and yet it's very, very rare that you actually, in fact, you can't be killed always, it never ends, it's a nightmare.
Yeah.
It just goes round and round this tiny corridor, but there are ways in which you kind of can be, like, eviscerated by the ghost or whatever, but it's really astoundingly rare. But it just introduces new and disturbing phenomenon and constantly keeps you in a really uncomfortable space in a way that most horror games don't actually. Like, Alien Isolation is very much a game about corridors, very narrow corridors that become very familiar. You go through, this is the mall bit, here's the spaceport bit, and I felt more familiar in those corridors than I did in PT's very narrow, it just looks like a place in a home.
It's got two adjoining corridors and then one bathroom.
Yeah, that's all it has. And yet the way it kind of frames that and lights it and has it changing and constantly? It's as though the place is watching you or kind of reacting to you in ways that you don't understand and can't possibly know. It's that unknowable nature of the place that makes it terrifying at its very heart. And that's something that very, very few things have done.
It's because your entire experience there is designed to be punishment, kind of almost.
Yeah, it's a purgatorial scenario.
Exactly, and so it doesn't matter that certain scenarios end with you being munched on by a ghost, because the purgatory continues, and it continues in different ways. In fact, death advances and accelerates the terror, you know, and
so which kind of solves many of the problems that you were talking about in that way. But then it's kind of what PT does. It removes the combative, kind of competitive element that many people think it isn't a game, because there is you can't win. There's no system you're beating or manipulating. It's like with the Alien, you can manipulate it, you can beat it, you can get past it. And it's essentially a competition. And PT isn't about that. It's a salt course, and in which you're going to be psychologically battered. And maybe that's why it's more effective. And it makes me think of things like The Void, which is a game where you can't really win. Again, it's another game about purgatory, really, and about, colours. Your lifeblood is constantly draining out of you, and you feel them to suck it out of the world around you, and you'll be pursued by these
This is by the pathologic people. Right?
That's right, yeah. And you'll be pursued by these horrifying thing called the Brothers, who own this realm. And they think you're one of them, but the more you kind of consume lifeblood or colour, the more they suspect that you might not be. They're all,
we don't do that. That's weird.
We're just monsters. We just,
We're not monsters. We don't consume lifeblood. What's wrong with you?
I mean, there's the moment where, you don't want to be noticed by them, but inevitably you are, and it's just horrifying and bleak and punishing and incredibly difficult, and that's what games can do that horror movies can't really. There are very few horror movies that are just relentlessly awful. Good ones are.
One of the things that I think like a key part of the horror of watching a horror film is your lack of control. It's the fact that you can't control what the person on the screen is doing, and they're always doing something that's really putting them in danger in a way you wouldn't do yourself, and you're like, oh, come on, don't do that, you fucking idiot. And so like you know more about their vulnerability than they do, and so you're kind of scared for them because you can see they're not scared enough. Like actually when someone in a horror film is just like screaming and running, it's not that scary to watch. It's the bit where they're investigating the sound and they don't seem to be as afraid as they should be, and that makes you want to be more afraid on their behalf. Because if you're actually there, it would be valuable to have someone there who was more scared than you were to say, hey, fucking don't do this.
Yeah, it reminds me of, then games like Outlast get around that really awkwardly by forcing you to do stupid things, because that's where you have to go. And, like the biggest example of this is it forces you to slide sideways through very narrow gaps where inevitably there's going to be something, a face turning up at the other end, and you know it's going to happen. And I'd be like, I wouldn't do that. In fact, I'm a journalist. You play a journalist and you go in there, the first thing you see is a man hanging from the rafters. And as a journalist, I would have just left. I would have just reported this to the police. Yeah, and it's really their business to get eaten in this haunted house. But no, you're forced to carry on because the objective marker's on the other side of this perilous barricade of monsters.
You can actually get around both these things, like the fact that death isn't permanent and the fact that you have control over the person so you don't get scared for them. One way to get both those things would be just to have allied characters who you don't control and who, when they die, are permanently dead. You're like not proper plot characters, but just AI sidekick type things. Who often get themselves in situations where you just can't help them. Like you're looking on a security monitor or something and you see someone you met earlier just walking past and the alien's right behind them. You don't know, there's nothing you can do to alert them to it. That could be scary.
Any super scary, what's the scariest games?
I think Stalker, actually.
Oh yeah?
Yeah. Because it's a place which, it doesn't rely on travelling you into obvious horror scenarios, but it's just an incredibly forbidding, unpleasant place to be. And you just, in order to kind of progress in the game, you just kind of have to explore it. And that there is such a sense of dread in doing that. It's it's good. It runs against, your objectives, in the same way that Outlast, you don't want to go through that gap. It's essentially doing that, but that's your basic level of interaction with the game, is something that you don't want to do. It's quite powerful.
It does seem to be about, like, the most potent horror experience about environment and the way that affects your mood. Like, I love the spider caves in Metro Last Light.
Oh yeah.
Just horrendous. The way they kind of force you into, it's just the way it's dark and you've got your flickery torch that is constantly fading and you have to keep shining on the enemies to flip them over, and the sound in there is just a place that you don't want to know, but you've got to flick the switch. You've got to get through it somehow. And, that's horrendous. But brilliant. Exciting.
I can't really think of one. I mean, I liked the Cradle in Thief 3, obviously. I usually enjoy, like, scary games. I like Amnesia. And I do get scared by them, but like there's not one that stands out as being particularly chilling, because I can hit like an upper limit of how scared I can be, because as soon as it happens, I'm aware of how I'm being manipulated, and so I'm always just focusing on how I'm being manipulated, and so everything that looks spooky, I'm thinking, how would they scare me here? And they'll probably do this and this and this, and then when they do it, it's never like truly surprising. It's like, it still makes you jump, but it's like, yeah, alright, for fuck's sake, I knew you were going to do that. So I don't think I've had a game where I've like been prolonged, been scared for a prolonged period of time. But, I talked about before, I think, once on the podcast, a little indie game called I'm Scared. It was really good. And, if you didn't hear me mention it last time, then I think last time I did spoil what the twist is, so I just won't spoil it this time, but it's a very simple first-person horror game about avoiding a certain kind of monster, and what happens when the monster gets you is what's interesting.
What else have you been playing, Tom?
I've been playing the chilling and terrifying Civilization Beyond Earth.
Ah!
I mean, I guess Earth is ruined in this future, so it's a bit of a downer. But we talked before about how, like, some of its problems stem from the fact that, from actually the setup, which is that, you're all leaving Earth to form a new civilization on a new Earth, and it'll, making civilization from scratch again. And then, because it's just a Civ game, what happens is you pretty much have to start fighting, or you're sort of encouraged to start fighting, or like there's just the two options. Like, do you want to build up your culture, or do you want to start fighting people? And, both of those are just, well, like, certainly fighting other people just seems bizarre. Like, we just got here, let's give it a chance, shall we? Let's just see how we get on. Like, we haven't literally come to a point where we need to attack each other. But that has happened in both the games I've played of it. I played 2 games, and both times someone declared war on me, and both times I just quit the game. It's just like, I played a lot of Civ 5, and most of my disappointments with Beyond Earth are just that it is Civ 5. I mean, it is any previous Civ game, but particularly Civ 5, because it's the direct successor to that. So all the interface is the same. All of the actual specifics of how the mechanics work are the same. And they've just switched in, like, instead of money, it's energy. But they still refer to you buying things with energy. It's like they did search and replace on that word, but didn't really replace the concept. And instead of happiness, you have health. Because in space, no one will get unhappy. So you just have health. But it works exactly the same way. It's the exact same mechanic. And you still have, like, culture policies and stuff, and just so much of it is just so exactly the same as it was before. And it even looks the same. Like, the one thing you'd think would be a dead cert is like, well, the alien world, at least it would be like a reskin of Civ. But it's not even a reskin of Civ. In that, like, it's still muddy brown and muddy green hills and stuff, and blue water. And it just looks like a slightly off-colour Earth. Like, there are places on Earth that look a lot more alien than this. And the cities aren't, like, in domes or anything. They're just regular cities. And I think you can build a dome as, like, one of the high-level upgrades as, for a certain kind of, like, domestic tech, but, like, by default they're just normal cities. And you're still sending out the same units to do the same things, to build the same stuff on the same land. And they just switched in all the names. And the only, like, major stuff that's new, there's quests to complete, which is, like, micro-scale things of, like, kill 3 of these type of enemies, and then you get some culture or something. And sometimes they'll ask you to make a choice about, you invented this technology, but would you like it to be better at health or better at food? And they're new, but they're not very interesting. And then the tech tree is now a tech web that goes in all directions, but it's super hard to see what the hell you can do in that tech web. I mean, web doesn't sound very inviting, and sure enough, it's not. It's like, it's just badly presented in an interface way, because everything is a big, chunky block, so it takes up a lot of screen space. So if you zoom out enough to see all of the webbing, then all of the names disappear, so you can't see what the hell the technologies are. They're just like anonymous blobs. And then the ones you've researched aren't clearly, they are a different colour to the ones you haven't researched, but it's counterintuitive, like they're brighter or something. And so it's hard to see what you have got and what you haven't got. It's hard to see what your options are. And then each individual tech, because it's Civ, is illogical. So it's just like, oh, this tech happens to unlock one building that gives you 1 health and 1 culture, another building that gives you 3 energy and 2 extra production, and this other ability, and now your units can go across water. It's like, what is that? I don't know. It'll have a name. It'll be neural engineering or something. But like, what? How? I just have to memorize everything. I just have to learn by rote every single specific detail you come up with for what these technologies do and how they relate to each other, because there's no inherent logic to it. And so, on an individual basis, you can look at one tech and see what it does, and then say, okay, I guess that would be good enough. I might want to get that. But there's no way to sit back and actually just have an overview of like, oh, I get the sense that if I go in this direction, I'll be better at culture, and if I go in this direction, I'll be better at war, and that kind of thing. So that's annoying. And yeah, so the reason I quit every time someone declares war on me is because, I mean, it's just kind of annoying. And in the first case, I was pretty much screwed. It was the strongest faction in the world, and I was one of the weakest factions in the world, and they had done quite a cool thing in that they had moved all their military units through my cities first. Like, we had an open borders policy, and I don't know if you can cancel those, but I didn't know how to if I could. And so they did the asshole thing that players do, which is move all your military units into place for an invasion before you declare war, and then declare war. And I could see they were doing it, and it was, 15 turns before they actually did declare war, but like, well, if you're going to declare war, the game's over. I can't actually do anything about that. Like, I will just lose immediately. So yeah, that didn't lead to any interesting decisions. And then the next game I got declared war, and I was in a much better position, and I probably could have taken them. But one of the reasons I didn't fight it in the first game, and the main reason I didn't fight it in the second game, was I know what war's like in Civ. It'll just be fucking endless. It'll just take so long just to destroy one city, and they have hundreds of cities. And they won't destroy me because I have hundreds too, but it's just going to be so... Every turn now, every turn is going to be move this unit 1 square there, move this unit... Oh no, this unit's blocked. The place you told me to go to is now occupied by an explorer unit that you don't care about. Oh god, I've got to tell them to go right then instead.
If only actual world leaders had your sense of ennui.
Yeah, exactly. No one go to war because I'm like, god, that's the effort.
It's so boring. Oh.
So, I was getting frustrated with this, and I realised this is ridiculous because if you're not really enjoying a Civ game, you shouldn't be playing it because it's going to take hours and hours and hours. I think it was 3 hours per game for those two, and both of them end in complete lack of satisfaction. I thought, God, could be doing something so much more productive with this turn. And also, I feel like a lot of these design decisions don't make sense, and it's got very, very complicated, and there's a lot to learn that doesn't really need to be in there. And there's lots of systems that overlap and lots of things that just seem redundant. So I combined these two facts to decide that I should just spend all the time that I would be playing Civ Beyond Earth if I loved it, and spend that time making my own game of that kind, or about the same thing at least, and try and see if my theories about the systems that are redundant are true, and basically make the simplest 4X game I possibly could. So something that has where you build your own towns and stuff, and then choose what text to research, and then choose what buildings to build, and then produce things from those buildings, and probably either go to war with neighbouring factions or overtake them with culture and spread your culture to them and flip their cities to your side. And actually, I came up with the design for this when I was playing Civ 5. The tourism expansion, I can't remember what it's called, but it basically adds tourism and more culture stuff. And in that, it just got ridiculous with happiness, culture, tourism, and I think one other thing that also meant just how generally happy people are and how they're spreading your word and how desirable your society is. And I'm like, this is ridiculous. It should just be one thing. So, I started prototyping this thing in Unity, and it actually, when I was figuring out what the system should be, I didn't have any idea for what kind of game, where the game should be set or what it should look like or anything about its theme. So it's all just generic concepts. But when I started making it in Unity, I was trying to pick a default shape for a town, and it was going to be just a little circular patch on the ground, and that would be a town. But then one of the other options, instead of a cylinder shape in Unity, is a sphere shape. So I put a sphere shape down instead and made it wide and low, and it looked like a dome. And I put a light inside it, and then it glowed, and everything else was dark. And that looks really cool. And if you place a bunch of those, it looks like a series of dome cities on a dark alien world. So I guess that's going to be the theme. But my hope, in terms of the design of it, I want it to be It's actually going to be real time instead of turn-based, because I don't really see the point of turn-based. And one of the annoying things in Civ is that it stops you all the time. It says, no, you can't progress. You need to make this decision. Whereas what I want is a game that just time progresses by itself, and then I stop it if I want to and say, no, I need to make this decision. And if I don't want to make any decisions, it just rolls on. And the idea is it will basically just be boiled down to the bare essentials, which would be, in terms of like research paths, there'd be army, happiness, money, and one other research. Research itself, so you can research to get better at research. And then those will also be your building types and also your unit types. So just be soldier, scientist, trader, and actually I don't think there is, agent would be the happiness one. So happiness is both how content your citizens are and how good you are at spreading your message to other people, to other cities and flipping them to your side. And so, each of those like different branches, those 4 different kind of sectors would have 3 different buildings, like a main one and 2 different upgrade type things. And for happiness, you could just try and make your city really, really happy and make it really close to the enemy cities and then try and flip them that way. But you can also make an agent, which is a thing that you send to another city and they're invisible to enemies. But when they're in the other city, they increase the emigration rate of civilians from that city to the other one. So anytime like one city's in range of another and it's happier, some of the cities from the unhappy city will walk to the other one. And if you're looking at one of your cities and people are leaving it faster than they should be for the amount of happiness, then you know you've got an agent in your city and you have to make your own agent to kill them. But if it turns out there's no agent there, then you just killed an innocent man and everyone gets even more unhappy. That stuff is not in there yet. I just have literally interchangeable civilians and cities and they can found them and that's it.
I like the idea of immigration causing happiness as well. There are certain political parties in Britain that would disagree with you on that particular assessment.
It would be the other way around, so happiness causes immigration.
Yes.
If your city is happy, then the people come to you. And in a charged political statement, that would have no effect on your happiness. It wouldn't make you any less or more happy.
I think maybe the problem I have with 4X games, but perhaps especially Civilization, is that it's supposed to be about the fantasy of controlling and ruling a civilization, which should be full of ideological decisions about how you think your citizens should live and how the world should be. And what it's actually about is bean counting.
Yeah.
It's about having, it's just about moving resources from here to there and to make this resource pile bigger. And then that means you can, get more resources in a different, it's entirely about just, moving money around, essentially. And the money's called different things, but then you can build a thing that will translate this sort of money to that sort of money.
Yeah.
And it's, none of that is interesting to me.
It's remarkably depoliticized, isn't it, really? Or, none of the ideologies in it really have any kind of, maybe they change the rates of certain things, but they're all balanced in order to be fairly equal.
Yeah.
Regardless if you've got a monarchy or
I love Alpha Centauri, for many reasons. First of all, it solves the problem you have, Tom, with, people fighting. The plot of Alpha Centauri is that they all went over on the same ship, all these colonies, and it was a terribly long journey. And in complete isolation, they all became incredibly fanatical and hate one another and completely disagree with each other before they even land on the planet. And then they just basically carry their grievances out and live them out for generations actually on the planet, which first of all solves that. But secondly, the civilizations have very, very strong ideological ideas about the future and about how humans should live, and whether they should, whether if there's crime, the criminal should be nerve stapled in order to correct their behaviour. And there's actually there's a stat for atrocity in Alpha Centauri. You can commit atrocity, and that will obviously make others more likely to turn against you. It will also affect your standing in the Galactic Council, which is another thing that isn't in Beyond Earth, which I always really liked. The fact that there was constant battle for political capital, through good deeds or through avoiding atrocities or for punishing atrocities that enabled you to get power in that way. And one of the victory conditions was to become the supreme leader of the council and unify the planet. And it's just, if you're playing as the Gaians or the Spartans, or very militaristic and believe that, military is the police state is the way to rule your cities, then you are occupying an identity and you're role-playing an entire way of living, an entire way for humans to be. And that's the fantasy of civilization. It's not, how do I make my big pile of coins bigger? Which is what it is now. It's what Civ 5 was, and it's what Beyond Earth is, I think.
Yeah. Galciv 2 has the Galactic Council, and you have a currency called influence, as well as normal money, and I think you sort of generate that if you have certain technologies to do with like making yourself more diplomatically powerful. But you can also trade it, so you can say, I'll give you some of my influence in the Senate in exchange for this, which is kind of cool. And the Senate convenes to like vote on laws that affect everybody.
Yeah, that's
like
right.
The thing about being able to surround an enemy with being able to surround an ally with your military units and then declare war on them. One of the things that comes up all the time in the Galactic Council and Galciv is you can vote to disallow that. So when you declare war, it will kick everyone out of your territory.
Yeah, I think that series has lost sight of what the initial fantasy was, really.
Yeah, well, Civ is about playing history, right? And it seems like Civ Beyond Earth is about playing Civ. It's a weird kind of failure of abstraction, really. I don't know.
It's such a great opportunity, though, to try it. So, like, the future setting of Centauri gave people the ability to kind of express politics in a way that solves the problem that many games companies have, where they actually don't want to be seen to be making any political statements whatsoever, because they're making an entertainment product that they want to appeal to as many people as possible, so they don't want to alienate any possible demographic. But in an abstract future scenario in which you can occupy any wing of, or any social policy that you think is right, like, you're not passing judgment on anything, because it's a purely hypothetical scenario on an alien planet, and that should give you the freedom to really go to extremes, which Alpha Centauri did, and Beyond Earth seems tepid in comparison.
What other games are there that allow you to colonize a planet with that kind of macro view? I mean, obviously there's things like Maya and stuff which are quite but you're quite up close and personal to individuals there. I'm thinking about things at the Civ scale, not necessarily 4X games, but just things at that scale about colonizing one planet.
There's Ender's Legend, probably one of the best games to innovate on these ideas is Crusader Kings 2, which is another real-time system, actually, where you can pause it and do your... and Crusader Kings 2 is incredibly stat-driven, but
it's set in olden days.
It is set in olden... Oh, of course, it's not abstracted yet, so sorry, you mean abstract.
No, I mean, it's like,
sci-fi.
Yeah, well, no, not exactly sci-fi, purely fulfilling the fantasy of landing on a new world as humans and having to,
sort it out.
Yeah.
Apart from Alpha Centauri.
There must be more.
Ender's Legend.
Sorry.
Not sure.
Yeah, I mean, you do it all the time in Galciv and in Sins of a Solar Empire, but it's super abstracted.
That's even more macro.
Yeah. You have like a little battle if there's anyone already on the city, already on the planet, and then you decide where buildings go on a like simple grid, and then you're done.
No. No more people. There must be more.
Get on it, developers.
Yeah.
Tommy, you started to tell me about a project in real life about making a new terraforming and civilizations.
Oh yeah, I was looking into terraforming, like as a genuine concept, after playing a bit of Beyond Earth.
Yeah.
And actually terraforming, like scientists have looked at the question of terraforming Mars and what it would actually take, and it would take more. It would require humanity to generate more substances than every business in the world could possibly create in order to do it at the moment. So it's beyond that capacity. But they were looking at, I think it's called paraterraforming, where actually you just build a dome, and inside the dome you create the atmosphere that you want. And there's a real world experiment in this called Biosphere 2.
Oh God, what happened to Biosphere 1?
Well,
we don't talk about Biosphere 1.
No, that's lost to the records now. And
it sounds like there won't be a Biosphere 3 from what I've heard of this story.
There will not be a Biosphere 3 after Biosphere 2.
We'll do Biosphere Infinite instead.
Biosphere was built in Arizona, and I think it was during the 2000s. It was constructed to be entirely sealed, and they filled it with an artificial atmosphere, and then they filled it with. They had different biomes within the biosphere. And this is real life, by the way. It sounds like a video game plot. And so they'd have like a savannah bit, and they'd have like a European foliage bit, and they're all separated on these little islands and everything. And then they sent 8 scientists in there, and they locked them in for 2 years to experiment, because they were sealed in. Anything they brought in would contaminate this meticulously contrived environment they'd created. And guess what happened to the 8 people who were stuck with just each other for 2 years in a very small confined environment? They were kind of mental. And they started to get into arguments with the people running finances of the project, and a great schism grew between the people outside the dome who were instructing the experiment and the people within the dome. And then from there, the people within the dome fell out with one another. Despite being best friends going into it, they grew to absolutely fucking hate each other. And at one point, the people outside the dome running the experiment commanded the leader of the expedition to leave the dome because they just weren't doing what they were told anymore. They'd just gone rogue. They were eating the rations. They weren't even supposed to open the rations because it contaminated shit. And but they were so hungry because they had to grow their own food and everything inside the dome. And they just weren't. And it was a low oxygen environment because they couldn't pump. They couldn't get enough plants to generate enough oxygen. So they were all feeling like shit, and it was terrible. And she just refused to leave the dome, saying, "In order for you to come and get me in the dome, you will break this experiment because you'll be introducing external elements," and therefore they just had to let her stay there for months, just in the dome, eating and drinking and just kind of looking at the sky. And in the end, it's the entire thing obviously collapsed. It's unsustainable. They were like, "Fuck it, just open it." It's been a total, massive, horrendous PR disaster. The real story is now, the madness of humanity, man's inhumanity to man, rather than this grand scientific experiment. And they closed it down, and now it belongs to the University of Arizona, I believe. And it's no longer a sealed environment; it's just a kind of museum for foliage and stuff. That's Biosphere 2, a real thing that happened. Look it up, read about it. It's fascinating.
When was this?
This was I think it was in the early to mid 2000s.
Oh right, that recent.
I think so, or maybe it was in the 90s. It was like within the last 20 years, I think. Or maybe not. No, do look it up, because I'm a bit fuzzy on those details. But I remember reading about it and going, this can't be real. It can't be real, but the structure's still there. You can go visit it.
Why did she want to stay in if she was going crazy with hunger?
I don't know. I mean, I think it was just sheer defiance, really. It's an amazing story. I think there's some good articles out there about it.
Yeah, legitimately links Beyond Earth to Halloween.
Yeah, there you are.
Thing that we thought couldn't be done.
I mean, if we left at Crisis 3's nanodomes, the one that they erect over New York to protect from aliens, and yes.
If it covers New York, it's not a nanodome. It's a megadome, at least. What have you been playing, Martin, if anything?
I've been playing Lords of the Fallen. Which is one of presumably a wearying number of Dark Souls wannabes on the way. Well, if you don't, Dragon's Dogma all kind of already did that, I suppose. But it's so heavily lifting from the playbook of Dark Souls. It is quite astonishing, but it's got all the ingredients, but it doesn't really know how to cook them. I don't want to be too down on it, because I have sort of been enjoying it, and there are things to admire. So it's, I mean, there's no real point describing its world. Fantasy place, bad stuff, demons. You're a bald man, so you've got to kill the demons, as all bald men are destined to do.
Are the Fallen the bad guys?
Yes, I believe so.
First time, surely, that law has been used in reference to enemies in a fantasy game.
Yes, and they have lords, and you need to disrupt their hierarchy by killing them. I think you're an ex-prisoner. You've probably got some sort of backstory. You sound like Sean Pertwee. What has happened to Sean Pertwee? He seems like a man who deserved a greater acting career than he actually got.
I think he's actually regenerated into someone else now.
Really?
He's
Lord of the Fallen now.
Oh dear. Anyway,
he's a lord.
So you go around, you beat up demons in this monastery. It's set in quite a confined area. It's all kind of well interlinked with itself, but it's not like a linear environment, and nowhere near as large and sprawling environment as Dark Souls offers you. And it plays a lot like Dark Souls. Enemies respawn when you die, and you go through the areas multiple times, killing them. You get XP, which also drops at your blood stain, essentially, when you die. There are a few there's some things that it does advance. I've written them down in case I forgot. There's not very many of them, so don't worry. Cool things I've written on this notepad. So you get, if you, when you're fighting, in combat, combo, so multiple slashes of your sword, if you time them correctly, they use up less energy. That's a new thing. That's kind of cool. Where you drop your XP when you die, you need to get back to it relatively quickly, because over time, the amount of XP that is stored in your kind of glowing XP bollock that you dropped just shrinks. So that's interesting. Gives you an extra incentive to kind of rush through things.
I hear it also buffs you if you're near it, apparently. So there's a kind of risk reward. If you're in a fight, then you can choose to either take the souls or take the buff before you grab it.
I didn't know that. There are other risk reward things as well. For example, if you do risky stuff by carrying a lot of XP around with you, thus risking dropping it and then not getting back to it, you get a lot more multipliers on loot drops. So you're actually kind of earning more if you carry around a risky amount of loot with you, essentially.
That's cool. Yeah.
That's kind of cool. Those things are cool. The combat, not quite so cool. Because if I had ever bad-mouthed Dark Souls collision detection, I'm so sorry.
Oh dear.
I'm so sorry. I didn't know how much worse it could be. But it really is, it's just fucking barking mad, this game. Like, you choose 3 different classes at the beginning. I think they're kind of more templates than, defined character classes in perpetuity throughout the game, because you can add stats to different people. So you can take your rogue class and then make him super heavy hitting if you wanted to. But they're kind of roughly kind of mage, rogue, and warrior. The problem is that the roll animation, which is the kind of the thing that really distinguishes your rogue from your warrior, is your ability to get out of the way of stuff. It's disastrously slow. Like, I mean, it looks really weird. It looks like if you were an 80-year-old man wearing a tire, you would still be able to roll faster than your character. It's like he's moving at half speed. Like, his animation suddenly just goes into slow motion when he's rolling.
Oh, shit.
And if you're a warrior, you don't move any distance. So you just you just paralyze yourself basically for a couple of seconds. I don't know, like, and all of the combat stuff feels that kind of oddly balanced. Like, you're just like, why have you put this in there? Because you didn't know what it was for. And even if you are a rogue and you can dodge out of the way of stuff, there's another problem. The problem is that the environments are extremely claustrophobic. The camera has trouble kind of tracking you in those small spaces and tracking the enemies at the same time. So getting distance on your enemies is always a problem. And even if you can, and you use, for example, a weapon which has a longer reach, I mean, that's a tactic that you would imagine might work to keep enemies at bay. They kind of just teleport into you with their final blow. So they kind of, even if they're a long distance away, their attack animation will suddenly see them swoosh across the battlefield and into you. So you can never keep them at range. And really, you can't roll. Your shield breaker animation doesn't break their shields. I don't know what you're meant to do in order to get that. So the only thing you can do is kind of lock onto them and strafe around them until they do something stupid. And thus you could defeat them, over very, very, very long, protracted battles.
I think that sounds in Sun Tzu's Art of War, isn't it? Circle straight until we do something stupid.
Yeah. It doesn't feel very gratifying, as you might imagine.
The combat is the game, isn't it? Really.
Yeah, if you're they haven't really ripped off Dark Souls' enigmatic and multi-layered storyline. So what you've got there is, Dark Souls is kind of like an incredible pastiche of fantasy storytelling and the hero's journey, and it also uses that to pastiche game convention, RPG convention, and all the things in those worlds are part of its meta-narrative. They're explained, like the idea of dying and restarting and having all the enemies respawn, that's all part of its kind of elegant meta-narrative and this kind of metaphysics that it's come up with. There's obviously none of that in Lords of the Fallen, which is just demons have come back, hit them.
This is a bold man.
Yeah.
Bad things. And, was it Sean Pertwee or John Pertwee?
Oh, Sean, well, it sounds like Sean Pertwee.
Okay.
Maybe John Pertwee doing
my
an impression of
regeneration
Sean
joke
Pertwee.
earlier would have made no sense there.
No, I didn't want to correct you on that.
Yeah, that's a shame. I never expected Lords of the Fallen to have a story, really. I never, there's no point copying Dark Souls in that way, is there? There's just no, I worry about Bloodborne a little bit. I know that's Miyazaki, but, I wonder if there really is a better story to be told with that format than has already been told in Dark Souls.
Yeah. You do encounter characters in Lords of the Fallen with whom you have dialogue with, and you can choose different reactions to them, which I assume changes their fate in the game. I haven't got far enough into it to know how significant that is, though it is kind of funny at the moment that you meet this monk who has been poisoned by a spider, and he's like, "Oh God, I've been poisoned," and your guy's like, "Well, you're gonna have to cut off your arm." He's like, "You do it." So you cut it off, and he's like, "Oh, cheers. All right. Well," and he's literally, then you have like a 5-minute conversation, and he's just got this stump arm bleeding all over the place.
Brilliant.
Very odd.
Is that the blacksmith in Diablo 3 where his wife has been turned into a zombie?
Oh yeah.
And you kill her for him, like flying kick into her face,
Oh, yeah.
vomits acid vomit on you, and then like her head explodes, and she's like, thank you for your help.
Yes. NPCs.
And then he's like, if you see my damn apprentice out there, tell him to get back. Your wife's acid vomit is on your shoes and her blood is on your clothes.
Aww. I thought I was speaking to a writer for video games recently who shall go unnamed, but it was interesting talking to him because he was able to delineate the areas in which writers are really culpable for the failures of game writing, and a lot of the areas in which I, as a reviewer, have probably sneered at games probably aren't actually the writer's fault, because in circumstances like that, they've probably been given the exact outcome of that dialogue that is desired. So, okay, after that objective, kill wife, is over. Now you need, in like a single line, to tell the player to find the apprentice. And obviously the writer's sitting there thinking, oh God, how am I going to segue?
Yeah.
But, that's it.
It's just be like, through sobbing, find my apprentice.
I really am very sad. But yes, yeah.
The other thing is, of course, games being designed around set pieces and areas and environments first, and then often requiring a writer to come in and try and impose narrative on just a nonsensical series of environments and circumstances.
I wouldn't be surprised also if the dialogue for thank you for your help, go find my apprentice was like the brief that probably didn't mention that his wife had just been killed. It's probably like, start of this quest, here's what the quest is about, and so have the blacksmith say something about that.
Yeah. So that ain't great. Lord of the Fallen actually runs pretty well on my PC. A lot of people are saying it runs like dog shit.
Crashing a lot.
Hasn't crashed once. The frame rate's been okay. There's been a couple of cutscenes that have gone a bit weird, but there's some kind of weird level of detail issues, but it runs pretty well. And it's a pretty stunning looking game, like in terms of the lighting model, the number of polygons it's throwing around, like the art style of it. It's a bit kind of demons, glowy eyes. There's some fucking cool looking armor here though. Like, from the beginning, the guy you play just looks incredible. I don't know how it's going to escalate, but like, I've already found an armor set that is probably the ending armor set of any other game.
Fantastic.
It's got like a screaming faces on each of his shoulders. He's got this amazing kind of trapezoid skull-like robot fucking helmet. It's amazing.
There's a severe armor escalation happening from game to game among fantasy worlds at the moment. And I think, like, in about 5 years, the hero will just be a giant metal cube that slides along the ground.
With screaming faces out of your face.
Yeah, that's what it's going to be. What's that? Oh, it's the protagonist bus. Gliding around killing things.
I think there'll be a minimum number of screaming faces you have to have engraved in metal on you before anyone takes you seriously.
James.
This guy, he's only got 2. They're only on his shoulders. You've got to have them on your knees as well.
I just love armor where it's like skulls drawn in filigree. Just the kind of beautiful, precise arts of what we're going to do. It's like an adolescent who has the amazing ability to craft the most ornate armor. It's like, I was going to do a skull.
Listening to the medieval version of Pantera as he's etching.
Yeah. I love it though.
Adolescent with enormous technical skill is probably relating to the development team or the craftsman who made the armor in the fantasy world.
I love that shit.
Yeah. Anyway, not that great. I probably will persist with it, so you may get some more thoughts on it next week. I don't know. Depends how sickened I am by further boss battles where you roll completely out of the way of a sword and suddenly your health is reduced by half. You're like, I don't think so.
Not a good candidate for video then?
It might be actually, because I think we get really angry.
That might be good fun actually. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you want to see more rage, then check out Dark Souls 2 playthrough on our YouTube channel.
Actually, we've been pretty well tempered so far. I think maybe the necromancers may have got you a little bit.
I literally screamed when I defeated those necromancers. But I think hopefully the fight is very entertaining, and that's episode 13, I think. So
There's some good moments of dread silence following one of Richard's self-assisted suicides.
Excellent. Yeah.
I remember this from like watching people play Spelunky. Like everyone has totally different reactions to failures, and when I fail, it's always like, come on! And then I watch someone else like have the most incredible, sublime, absurdly frustrating, unfair death, and they'll just be silent for like 20 seconds, and they'll be like, alright, well. Who are you? How can you react that way?
It's so, I love watching people do that, go through that. Actually, I do quite enjoy watching. I'm starting to understand why Let's Plays are so popular.
But also just like laughing at it too, like, there was one, I can't remember, I think Nick Brecken and Chris Thurston are, joint leads for shortest ever death in Spelunky, like, you know, from level 1, world 1, walk to the left, fall on the first set of spikes. And I think both of them had a long silence reaction to it. Rather than any, like,
I remember Chris's video because he was really drunk when he did it, and he just sort of deflates on camera. And he just says, "I really wanted to do well." The saddest voice, and no, you should watch that. It's very funny.
Yes, and also watch our Dark Souls videos. The ones that are currently up, episodes 13 to 15, probably by the time this goes up.
Yes, those just start going up. There's the slightly grainy quality to them. But then that will go. We've fixed those visual problems now, and it looks beautiful.
Yes.
Future episodes look lovely.
13 to 15 are a shitty pixel soup.
Yeah.
But after that point, they become crystal clear.
And then Rich turns up to dish out ponage to the noobs, as I believe the kids say these days.
Shall we do some questions from questions?
Yes.
Yeah, this question is from Ashley Felton. He says, quick question for Tom Francis. As a developer, how does the semi-regular steep discounts of normal price on Gunpoint affect sales? At the time of writing, it's currently marked down on Steam to 80%. Sorry, that's no longer available. And I was curious to know if the presumably increased sales offset the heavy discount. Do you notice any sort of increase in the normal sales following a discount like this? If your relationship with Valve permits you to say, how do you manage and deploy such discounts throughout the year? I can answer this pretty quickly because it's all just facts. Yes, always the number of sales far accounts for the discount, no matter what the discount is. If you discount it by 99%, you would definitely get more than 100 times your normal sales. So it's always more than makes up for it. And really the only question is like, is it 10 times as much money or is it 100 times as much money? Like,
wow.
It's never really less than that. The effect of sales is massive. That is for things where Valve are going to do something with it, like they're going to actually promote it. And so that also answers the other question, which is, how do you organize those things? Almost always Valve come to me and say, hey, we've got a promotion coming up, do you want to do this? Or do you want to be in a daily deal? Or do you want to do this? And the trick with that is that, I think this is just, conjecture, but it seems that Valve make those decisions based on how well things sold initially. So your launch month, you're probably going to do a discount of some kind. How well you sell a launch month on Steam is probably going to determine how often Valve come to you in future to say, hey, do you want to be part of this promotion? And you can, at any time, you can make your own discounts, but in those cases, Valve aren't going to be promoting it on their store page, so they're not going to make a big deal of it. And that's really what actually works, is when it's discounted and Valve is saying it's discounted, and then you get a bunch of attention. And the other thing was, do you see increased sales after the discount's over? Not really, but it doesn't hurt it. Like, it doesn't go down. It's usually up for a little bit, like by a little bit, and then it goes away. Next question is not on the next page. Robert says, Dear Slots and Spins, you mentioned gambling in last week's episode, and I thought I'd weigh in. There's a massive amount of research on this in psychological literature, and it's almost all terrifying. Gambling often hijacks the mechanism for classical conditioning, associating the pleasure, a win, to an action, the act of gambling. This can lead to addiction-like effects, chasing the increasingly elusive high. It can also result in odd behaviours like bobbing pigeons or superstitions like lucky underwear. It's also partly based on the fact that we're quite bad at maths, particularly probability, and how the chances are in our favour even when it empirically isn't. There also exists the gambler's fallacy, where we think because the previous 99 loot drops were crap, this means 100 will be influenced by this and be great, even though most gambling systems don't work this way. This can combine with the sunk cost effect to create some scary outcomes. So to tack a question onto this, if you discover a game is sneakily manipulating you, insidious microtransactions, conditioning, etc., does it affect your enjoyment of said game? Keep casting those pods, Robert.
I'm wrestling with Destiny over precisely this thing, to be honest. Especially now they've announced their £20 expansion, which contains very little, I think, content to justify it. I won't talk about it very much, it's not a PC game, but the entire progression from level 20 to 30 in that game is based entirely around gear. And you can grind very, very slowly for gear by obtaining marks from running missions, or you might get a lucky drop that will suddenly level you up by an entire level in one go, and those drops are really what you're always hoping for when you're playing. And that is conditioning you to, it's just a gambling thing. You run a raid and you run a strike and you hope for that elusive drop.
Yeah, Chris was saying in the last podcast that there's a sort of reliable way to get to the next level and that it doesn't actually take that long. But because people could find something that would skip them to that level, they just repeatedly grind the same things with a very, very low chance of success again and again and spend more time doing that than they would have done if they'd just gone for the guaranteed win.
I don't find the reliable way to be that quick at all. It's probably the difference for me, Chris, where like I'm currently grinding out to get a helmet and I've been at it for 2 weeks. And it's 120 marks and...
Okay, I'm not playing this game.
I play it for I don't play it for huge chunks of time. Like I'll play it for an hour. Maybe an hour a day, perhaps. That's quite a lot of time, actually. Add it all up. And then a strike takes 20 minutes and you get 5 marks and you need 120 marks to get a helmet. And that's a lot of shit you've got to do in order to get that guaranteed reward. So what you're really hoping for is the drop, which never comes. In my case, it never fucking comes. And a lot of people complain about, Destiny's loot curve. I think again, it's the bell curve where, people already satisfied with Destiny probably had a couple of legendary drops or a couple of, amazing drops during their journey. I have had no drops. So I'm basically almost done with it now. I want to run the raid, but I'm kind of done with that economy. I'm not sure I'll buy the expansion at all or stick with it.
I remember like TF2, when it introduced items of any kind, because it didn't have them originally. There were unlockable weapons, and then they added unlockable hats, and they made hats incredibly rare, and it was about a year after they added hats before I actually ever found one of any kind. Like, just any hat. There was like hundreds of them by that point. And the chance of them dropping was so low that even as a very consistent player I was playing all the time, I still just never ever found one. And that was a massive manipulation in that, that was a source of frustration for me. I was really like, just fucking forget this whole stupid thing. I'll never find a hat. Imagine if they reversed, if all along the probabilities of finding a weapon and probabilities of finding a hat had been the other way around. So that hats were all over the place and you just found them all the time, and finding an actual new unlockable weapon was the rarer thing. Weapons are actually good. They're actually really useful, interesting, cool things. And even if they're not outright better than the replacement, they're still, you really want to play with them because that's, an exciting, cool thing. And with those updates, even they changed around how you unlock weapons for lots of different ways, but, even when it was pretty much just hope you find them, I still had them in fairly short order and it was fine. But, my desire for the hats was fueled entirely by their rarity. And that was, Valve know this, and that's why they made them rare. Yeah. And the rarity does not have to correspond to value, like it doesn't have to have anything to do with the quality or usefulness or interestingness of the thing. It could just, as long as it's rare, people want it. And, that certainly manipulated me. It didn't, the other question is, does it affect your enjoyment of the game? And I would say no. If they'd made hats really common, I think it probably would have been worse.
I think it's about what they attach, like you hit the nail on the head, I think, with what is what they is attached to those drops. And in Destiny's case, access to the Vault of Glass, which is this amazing raid that's supposed to be this beautiful FPS puzzle box that you solve collaboratively with your friends. It's supposed to be just a brilliant piece of work. And you have to be at least level 26, 27. And it's gated behind all of these mechanisms. And that's the problem I really have. It's because it's stopping me from having fun with the game.
Yeah, that's stupid. Paul Newrick writes, I accidentally fell asleep while listening to episode 61. I woke up after midnight, still wearing headphones, with no recollection of the last 15 minutes of the show. So I have 2 questions. Did the last 15 minutes contain any subliminal messages that I should be concerned about? And how super awesome is the the character encoding is messed up. The photo mode in Middle Earth, Shadow of Mordor. Sorry, it's written as Middle Earth, Shadow of Mordori, which is why it's throwing me.
Oh, weird.
Is it something that you think more games should adopt? And how would you implement it in a first-person game where the protagonist is usually a disembodied camera? Keep up the good work. Yeah, it's fucking awesome. I love it. It's great.
I think we were talking about this before, in between, we took a little break between the main point and the questions.
Now you've ruined the magic.
I ruined the magic. I'm so sorry. And in that quantum space between podcast sections, we were talking about how brilliant the photo mode is in Shadow of Mordor.
Yeah, and it's brilliant in itself, because so it pauses the game, then you can rotate the camera, you can turn off the HUD, you can move it, not just like around your character, but you can also just leave your character behind and go off and go near some Uruks and look at them. And in a given fight, really makes you realise like how graphical fidelity is come along, because this is like proper next-gen shit. Like, whatever anyone's ever shown you to say, this is what the next gen will be like. Once we have already high poly counts, we'll be able to do faces like this, and we'll be able to have this level of detail. All of that shit is just absolutely in there. There's no limitation on how crisp and detailed and meticulously modelled it looks. To the point where I really think, like, graphics are done. Art is not. For sure, you can have more interesting art styles than this, but in terms of just, like, the level of detail on a person's face for a sort of characterized monster, I don't want it to be any better than this. Stop now. Don't make it any better. Because it still costs you resources, but, like, the actual... it's already clearly at the point where I don't notice it in game, because I didn't know this till the photo mode was in there. I thought, oh, they all look kind of cool, and when you look at them on the Sauron's army menu and you look at the captains, you can kind of zoom in on them and you see that they're cool there. But in game, you never really notice it unless it goes into slow-mo and zooms in a lot. And screenshot mode lets you go into slow-mo and zoom in on just any Uruk, and you realise they're all like that. They're all incredibly beautifully detailed, like proper, like pre-rendered cutscene quality, you know, just, you never know they were made of polygons. And they have so much like unique characterful detail, or that they all look different to each other. They've all been randomized in interesting ways. And there are types. There's like the scrawny one, and there's the big bulky one, and then there's the kind of stupid looking ones, and the slightly fat ones, and the more muscular ones. But then on top of those, they have all these different types of armor they can have, all weird like facial deformities, and there's so much character to the way they look. And also, I think the animation is incredible in that game, and I only just starting to appreciate that with the screenshot mode, because you just freeze a frame and you zoom around from any angle, and you realise even when they're standing there waiting for their turn in combat, which is a ridiculous thing to do in the first place, they look so fucking cool. They really own it, you know. They're standing there waiting to fight, and so they pose in the most kind of like menacing or heroic or like badass poses. Like, no one's just standing there. They're always kind of doing something and like threatening or waving their axe or yelling. And so, like, no matter where you pause it, no matter where you put the camera, you'll just have this amazing scene that looks like it could be hand-painted.
Their facial rigs are what impressed me the most, because not only do they map to, obviously, some kind of lip syncing when they're talking, but they're not mapped to human mouths, because they have differently articulated lips, which can be pulled back over their gums in exaggerated ways. Yeah. So they've obviously been, but that stuff is hand animated, I guess, or I don't know how they would have done it. They must have mocapped, you know, facial movements, but maybe they had two sets and exaggerated some for the lips, or I don't know. Yeah,
no idea how they did it. It is amazing. And before photo mode, I never knew the faces my own character was pulling. Because and it is amazing.
That's for the best, maybe.
Italian is like painfully generic looking compared to the rest of the rest of the game is so characterful, and the Uruks are amazing, but his face is weirdly
bland,
just totally bland, except in combat when you freeze it in certain circumstances, spin it around, and it looks like his lips are trying to flee his teeth, just kind of peeling back across his skull in this weird, insane.
He grimaces like no other man.
mad.
I don't know if great. For that reason, though, I don't think you're going to see this kind of photo mode in a first-person shooter, because that would put the entire weight of animating a character in every possible position the player could get into, which you would never need to see, except in a photo mode. It would seem a bit extraneous in terms of resources.
Paul says, how do you implement it in a first-person game where the protagonist is usually a disembodied camera? I think that's kind of the answer, is to just, you wouldn't have the character model. You just let yourself zoom around the world and eliminate the protagonist.
I'd love that in Alien Isolation, for example. Pop it out when the alien drops down, gets a good shot.
Should ask how Duncan Harris, aka Dead End Thrills, managed his shots.
He's got a beautiful, if ever so slightly spoilery set on Dead End Thrills, and you should check it out. Those alien shots are great.
As with all Duncan Harris things, there's like 2 pictures before you hit the pictures of bums. Shapely bums.
In Alien.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, amazingly, yeah. He's somehow got it so the camera appears behind Amanda Ripley's knickered anus as she gets out of her pod.
There you are.
If there's a bum in the game, Duncan will find it. It's his mutant superpower.
Come for the shots, stay for the bums, maybe.
Simon Van Alphen writes, fans often forget the disaster that was DMC2 and remember DMC1 as a better game than it actually was. Yes, it may have started the genre, or at least managed to make the brawler work in 3D, but remember all the Resident Evil parts still suck in there. Honestly, they're not so much a fan of the series as a whole as they are of Devil May Cry 3. But there is something that DMC has going against it. Why is Dante angsty and angry? His mother was killed by his dad. Well, that seems to answer the question. How do we know Virgil is actually a bad guy? He kills, I guess this is spoiler warning for the DMC. He kills a pregnant woman by shooting her through the womb with a high-powered sniper rifle. Jesus Christ.
A bad guy wouldn't do that.
How do we know he's the bad guy? Sure, he kills a pregnant woman by shooting her through the womb with a high-powered sniper rifle as she is running to her husband, which incidentally also becomes the motivation for another male character's actions. Then there's the very Freudian virginal girl witch, who apparently doesn't have sex, not a mum or a mom-to-be, but does carry around the magical hole through which the brothers can travel to a wondrous world of physical exercise and ecstasy for the senses.
This is an interesting Freudian reading.
I have not played this game, so this is intriguing to me.
DMC is brilliant. But
I
not
think,
for these reasons.
I think she also gets captured and needs rescuing at some point. And there's 2 girls from the opening cutscene. Don't need to say much about that. Dante is allowed to have sex without consequences with more than one woman, and that's okay. And that's all the female characters I can think of in this game. Oh, and one boss who might be a female because the character calls it an ugly bitch before killing it. Strong female character. As female characters go in DMC 2 and 3, Trish's might not be a high bar, but DMC might even manage to limbo below the bar set by DMC 4's Gloria when it comes to the women.
Only these, I think I've got mixed up between DMC 1, 2, 3 and the remake DMC, which was just called DMC, not Devil May Cry, which Ninja Theory released last year and was brilliant.
So I see now Simon, when he asks why is Dante angsty and angry, he's not actually wondering about that. He's saying, it's to illustrate his point that the reason is because his mother was killed, and that's killing a woman to give a male character motivation.
What's the question?
Yeah, well, there's no question, but it's a kind of, I guess, a fairly well backed up tirade. DMC, I haven't finished it actually. I really enjoyed what I played of it in terms of the combat mechanics are spectacular and the environments, their reaction to your presence and all were great, I think.
Shattering about.
Yeah, and there's some kind of interesting kind of narrative trappings in the way it presents demons and, the whole Fox News thing where you're fighting inside essentially a Fox News broadcast.
Yeah.
Which is kind of cool. It's like you're jumping between the graphics of a day-to-day, Fox News spoof.
Yeah. Punch going back in the face.
But, it's not,
it's not subtle.
No, he's not especially charming either. He does, I did kind of, bristle at some of his things that were seeming meant to be kind of like boyish or roguish, but actually just came off as a bit kind of noxious. So I haven't got to the parts where he's talking about that stuff yet. But
the noxious, like DMC3 is the Devil May Cry 3 is when he becomes a knob basically, and he is supposed to be a dickhead. Like he's not supposed to be like a nice guy in any sense. I think like the idea is that he gains a bit of self-awareness over the course of DMC, but he's taught to reserve the demons by the end, whereas he's just kind of an asshole at the start.
So I'm thinking there's DMC 1, 2, 3 and 4, and then there's DMC itself.
Yeah, which is an attempt to reboot the series.
Right.
3 is very good, and the reboot is good. You don't really need to play the others, I don't think.
Texas Matt writes, Dear the Crate and Crowbar Puncast, I consider video games to be my primary passion and the primary source of entertainment, so why do I find it so difficult to spend relatively small amounts of money on games that I want? I'm writing this email in a $16 child-sized Star-Lord costume.
Best admission from an email from a reader. Listen.
I bought on a whim without hesitation on the off chance it would fit. I can wear it for Halloween. But I often find myself staring at a $15 or less video game on Steam that I know I would enjoy and convincing myself not to buy it. regardless of the fact that I know I would get far more enjoyment out of it than the mostly likely too small Halloween costume that I might wear for one day and then forget about. In fact, I would say most things I spend upward of $15 on give me less enjoyment per minute than any game I could get for the same price. So why the inner struggle every time I open Steam? Am I spoiled from Steam sales? Is it simply easier to spend money on things more tangible than games? Do I subconsciously consider games a waste of money? Do you share my struggles, gods of pod? Sincere thanks from your friend, Texas Matt. P.S. The costume doesn't fit.
See, your problem there, Texas, is not your unwillingness to spend money on games. It's possibly your willingness to spend money on ill-sized Marvel property costumes.
Child-sized Star Lord costume. Of all the gambles to take.
What a loot drop. That is fantastic.
There's definitely a psychological thing going on where sort of people's value judgments on games, in terms of price versus amount of enjoyment they get, is measured solely by other games and not by other entertainment experiences or life or anything else. And in particular, the thing that always comes up is price of a cup of coffee for a mobile game. And a mobile game that you like will give you a lot more entertainment than a cup of coffee. And there was a great email posted by one of the creators of Monument Valley saying that, they absolutely love the game, fantastic, amazing experience, but only lasted him a bit over 2 hours, so he's just furious at how short-changed he feels and how it's a total waste of his money. I can't believe that it's so short. And that game's £2.50, I think. So £2.50 for 2 hours.
Yeah. That's relatively expensive for a mobile game, which 69
Yeah, exactly. It's expensive for a mobile game, so he sees it as not £2.50, but he sees it as 400% over what I'm used to paying for these other games.
Yeah, it's because it's when you look at different entertainment products, you regard their economies, their insular economies differently. So, cinema tickets now are just £10, and that's just what they are now. And it's had to evolve very gradually over a long period of time for that to be acceptable to people.
Yeah.
And it isn't really, though.
It's not.
It's not acceptable. That's why I stopped going to the cinema.
Yeah.
That's why I play games instead.
Yeah.
That's why I play £2.50 games.
Yeah. I've almost completely stopped going to cinema. It's kind of a miserable experience as well. It's not a very good product anyway. But yeah, games on the PC, especially on Steam, have become experienced a very rapid devaluation over the past 5 years. The Steam sales have changed user expectations massively. So that's quite unusual in gaming. Games have just been devalued to incredibly rapidly, to the extent where paying $15 for something that will last you 20 hours is an iffy purchase. You know? The other thing is that there's just so much out there. I think he's right. There is just a deluge of stuff now which is great, obviously.
The thing is, this sort of ties a bit back into the Steam sales question, where it's true to say that if you increase the price of if you set a high price for your indie game, then fewer people will buy it, and there will be this big chunk of people who are like, this is overpriced, I can't believe you charge this much for it. But that doesn't mean it will do less well. In terms of your survivability as a developer, that depends on revenue, not number of sales. And if you charge $20 instead of charging $10, you get half the sales, but you get twice the money per sale. And it is a direct relationship like that. There's no fixed overhead. The percentage you get as a developer is a percentage. And so if you sell for twice the price, you get twice the money.
Yeah.
Absolutely. There's no reduction in that. So you literally only have to sell half as many copies if you charge $20 instead of $10, and you will. And then when you do sales, you can reduce it by 70% or if you reduce it by 50%, then you're charging $10, and you'll sell way more copies of that than you would if you just charged $10 in the first place. You'll get, much more than the double sales you need to make money off that. And so actually charging a decently high price for your indie game is still a good move, it's still viable. The caveat is it does have to be good. If there's any problem with your game that people are going to get hung up on, then if you charge twice the price, they'll get doubly hung up on it. And so it's all about this critical point of acceptance where if your game has enough going for it, then the fact that it's expensive will cause some people to be angry, but it won't tip the zeitgeist against you, and you won't end up being a total failure. Whereas if your game is just kind of mediocre and then you charge double price for it too, then you'll just trash the whole reputation of your game. It will just become a thing that people hate, and it will just, even if it's good, even if it's not bad, it will become known as bad just because you overcharge for it. So it's like a delicate balance where, like, in terms of profitability, it's probably good to charge as much as you can possibly get away with. But then in terms of, but then if you overjudge it even slightly, then you could just hit this critical tipping point where people just turn against you and just kind of hate your thing. So, like, I mean, Gone Home is incredibly critically adored, amazing reviews, and won Game of the Year in all kinds of places. But also has a huge backlash against it on Steam. Like, there's loads of people who just fucking hate Gone Home and just think it's the absolute devil, and it's the, the zenith of the worst trends in gaming, and
they are dumb people, though, right?
They are, yeah. But Gone Home is $20.
Sorry, dumb people.
Gone Home is $20, and it sold pretty well at launch, and then it just kept selling like really, really well. And when it got all kind of the awards and accolades, and it sold brilliantly, basically. And it's done incredibly well for those guys. And so it's not a case of like, oh, my thing's a bit niche, so I can't charge too much for it. Or some people might not like it, so I can't charge too much for it. As long as you have enough positive force behind you, you can charge a decent amount for your game.
I think the main psychological barrier is someone, like, from the listener's perspective here, like, from Texas, is the mountain of shame that everyone is kind of nurturing, now. The games that there isn't enough time in your remaining life to finish what you've bought.
Yeah.
And there's a kind of deep guilt involved in purchasing yet more stuff to put on top of that mountain.
In that case, you're probably right not to buy it. It's probably good to play the things you already have.
Yeah.
It's weird though, I have a little short list. I use Steam's favourites list. Instead of them being my favourite games, they are my to-do list of things I've got to play because I feel like I should, and I haven't played them yet. So once I've played something, I take it out of my favourites list, even if I really liked it. And then, like, about 50% of them, before I ever play them, I decide to uninstall them. I'll be like, I'm never really going to play that.
Yeah, here's an exercise. Take all the games you haven't played on Steam, add up their average playtime, and then, solve that as a percentage of your expected life span as a human in your region, and then never ever buy a game again.
When I look at my playtime on Steam, you can look at if you go to your profile and then click the games you own, it will show them in order of playtime, total playtime ever. And I think probably TF2 is top, and Supreme Commander is way up. Supreme Commander 2 is way up there, because Supreme Commander 1 I didn't play on Steam. But then, like, in really short order, really surprisingly short order, you get to stuff I flat out didn't like. Like, things I played. I mean, now Absolution is in there because I played 30 hours of that because I was reviewing it.
Yeah.
But like Dragon Age, I wasn't reviewing that. I didn't really enjoy it. I have nothing against the series as a whole, but I just didn't like the fiction, and I wasn't having that great a time with it. But it was just about good enough that I kept on playing it, and so I played like 80 hours of that, and that's one of my most played games of all time ever. And Steam has like most games I played. It doesn't have all of them, but it has most of them. And then you get down into the next games, and you start to find, like, in my top 30, there's loads of stuff actually I really, really love. But it's all about 20 hours. So anything goes above 20 hours becomes one of my most played games of all time, top 10. And yet the requirement of quality for that to happen is not that high. Like, that can happen with just something that's a bit addictive or...
I think this is why a lot of games companies are trying to create games that are the black hole into which you just sink the rest of your game.
Yeah.
Like, they create, like, perhaps Dota is one of those, and Destiny is definitely one of those, where it's just going to be the thing, and it's endless. It will never be beaten. There's no average completion time because it's designed to last forever. Diablo, I've massively fell for that one as well. But I enjoyed them on a surface level, but I think perhaps if I had, instead of just playing Diablo for that amount of time, played a lot of different games, I would be a better, richer person for it, for having more experiences and having,
Yeah.
or maybe just reading some books instead,
Yeah, I wonder how... I'm
It's best not to think too hard about this sort of thing.
how I feel about Spelunky, because that's a game that actually doesn't do any exploitative stuff in terms of trying to hook you. It doesn't give you any persistence. You don't earn anything. You don't unlock anything. You unlock some characters, but they don't really matter.
There's some shortcut stuff as well, isn't there?
Yeah, I guess, but I actually don't use those even if I don't have them. And it actively just, like, as you're playing it just slaps you in the face and says, no, stop playing. Fuck you, you've lost all your progress, start again. And it's almost trying to put you off. Like, it doesn't explain things you have to learn by killing yourself. And it's constantly off-putting. And so the fact that I did still put so many hours into that game, I sort of don't feel bad about it. I feel like the reason I did that was because I genuinely liked it. Like, it wasn't, I was addicted. I was just like, I really want to play this game. I enjoy playing this game and I'm going to play it, even though it's trying to put me off playing it. And so the hours I sunk into that, I don't feel so bad about. But whereas, like, World of Warcraft, that's not. Steam doesn't log that, but if it did, it'd be fucking horrifying, because I think I played about 4 different characters to level 33. I'm just not a fan of that game. I just don't think it's that good. It's fine, and it has some amazing sights in it and stuff, but I'm sure the amount of playtime I've sunk into it is obscene compared to how much I actually like it.
I think it's best to look at, when you're consuming entertainment, often there are different types of entertainment you're looking for depending on your mood and your mental state. And there's kind of passive entertainment that if I wasn't playing Diablo, I'd probably just be watching shit television.
Yeah, that's true.
That's the time it's occupying instead of active time. And then I'll play Dark Souls or something in active time.
Zachary Arundel writes, Dear Deirdre, many thanks for your advice last week. So this is a fella who wrote to us last week because his girlfriend was suspicious of the people he talked to via, voice comms while he's playing games. And he didn't want to tell them that he had names like Tanghammer and Kilbo Fraggins, which, Kilbo Fraggins, I think, is the reason we read out his email. That's just a great username. Yeah. And he's worried that she would think he was a giant nerd if he admitted that that's who he's talking to. So he lies to her and pretends he's talking to his real life friends. I think we advised him to come clean, did we?
I wasn't on that one.
Don't do that.
Okay, well, he did come clean, so let's hope we did advise him. I came clean to my girlfriend and told her I was chatting to my online pals Tanghammer and Kilbo Fraggins. She wasn't happy. Oh, God. I tried to explain they were just my online mates and that I only hung out with them for their Twitch aiming skills and because they didn't use racial epithets. She wasn't having any of it. She accused me of being addicted to cybering. Kicked me out of the flat. What? This can't be true. Days later, I nipped back to the flat to pick up the vacuum cleaner, which I paid for. I heard some murmuring and from the spare room. I peered round the door. Then I touched your bottom with the ostrich feather. I think you can guess what was going on. My former girlfriend was cybering with Kilbo Fraggins. I slumped away with the vacuum and the L Classic C1 in cherry red, if you're interested. A great vac. I've lost my girlfriend and a great no-scooper. Thanks, guys. Zach. Prozac is my tag, since you asked. P.S. Can you talk about some Destiny some more? I think we already did that. Starting to realise Zach's problem has perhaps descended into fiction at some point, and we're not sure that we accurately identified when it did.
Anyway, I take your vacuum recommendations hard.
Yeah, that's useful. I got a Roomba recently. Now my vacuum is done by a thing that has pathfinding.
Not great pathfinding, but...
Yeah, as a game developer, I have criticisms about its pathfinding. And actually, the thing it's probably possible, I should look it up online, but I would love to be able to hack it. I would love to be able to program its own pathfinding, or just say, go in a spiral formation, or do this. Because I'm actually doing, formation stuff on my 4X game thing that I'm doing in my spare time. So... and pathfinding tends to be really easy. It's not a difficult problem. I always thought it was a thing that was impossible because so many games have problems with it. But A-star pathfinding is sort of industry standard thing, and that is super easy and super fast. It's no processing time built into Game Maker. So I'd love to add that to my Roomba.
This is where it starts, Tom. The machine rebellion. When you teach you pathfinding, one day, you'll go away on holiday for a week and you come back and there'll be just a perfectly vacuumed shape in the floor that spells kill. And you'll know that you've turned it bad.
Can I digress?
Yeah.
Have you heard the reboot of Terminator? The plans for it?
No.
I think it's going to be a TV series.
Is it a Roomba?
Oh, is it?
I don't know.
The Roomba goes back in time.
It's actually worse than that.
Really?
Yeah, so...
it's Emilia Clarke and Matt Smith are in it.
Yeah, Emilia Clarke plays Sarah Connor. Matt Smith plays Sinister Future Man. Not quite clear who he is. Some guy I didn't recognise plays Kyle. What's his face? Anyway, they've rejigged it so that instead of Sarah Connor being hunted down by the Terminator... in this version of Terminator, she's raised by Arnold Schwarzenegger's Terminator as a child. I don't know quite. I don't know quite how that works in terms.
So she's become like a antisocial loner who's really good with a sniper rifle but can't talk to people.
Of course, she's good with a sniper rifle. She was raised. Oh my goodness. She was raised by. Okay, good. So.
Yeah, as the article I read astutely put it, that's the premise for a Funny or Die sketch, not totally.
Oh
Anyway,
dear.
yeah.
Oh dear.
Never mind.
Fuck that. Chaos Murph writes, what is the most fitting bit of game music ever, and why is it Rules of Nature for Metal Gear Rising Revengeance? I wanted to say that I have a particular favourite bit of music in terms of like the way it's used, which is in Half-Life 2, when you come out of Ravenholm, you go up a train track uphill until you come out of basically the mines, and there's a little area that I don't think it has a particular name, but it's between Ravenholm and Highway 17 when you're driving the car along the coast. And it's just a little warehouse where some resistance guys have been holding up. And you meet up with them, and then you get invaded by a bunch of, I think just like, what do you get invaded by? Do you remember? There's an attack, anyway, and you fight off the attackers. I think it's just combined soldiers with pulse rifles, because it's when you get the pulse rifle. And then once you've killed them all, it's just a normal fight. It's not that difficult. And then afterwards, you sort of look around and there's just like, most of the rebels are just like lying on the floor, bleeding to death, and some of them are trying to help the ones who are bleeding. And there's just a really like sad bit of piano music that plays there. And I think it's only like 30 seconds long. And it's only just one little bit of music that just repeats like 3 times. And it's really beautiful. And it just like, it actually changes the mood of the thing. Usually when you win a fight, you're like, yes, I win. And then I get to move on and not care. And in this case, it just says, no, you won, but like a bunch of people died. And there's nothing you can do about it. And it's just a really difficult, tragic fight. And just people are dying all the time. And it's not, and then you get to drive a cool car along the beach. Run over antlines.
Video games. All of the Firelink music that plays when you go back to Firelink Shrine, it's just a really subtle kind of little piano theme that sad
what,
and hopeful. In Dark Souls.
It's
Basically the tiny hub place.
The Spad tweets, Voporoo, or Voporov, I don't know.
Voporo.
Is arranging a 1v1 mid-Dota tourney on the forums. Any chance you could give it a plug on the pod? I think we just did.
Plugged. Go visit our forums.
Yeah.
They're cool, full of nice people.
You should. They're at creatingcrowbar.com/forum. And that is all the time we have. So, you can also email us questions at questions@creatingcrowbar.com. You can tweet us at creatingcrowbar on Twitter. And you can tweet us individually. I'm at Pentadact, Pentadact.
I'm at Marsh Davis, that's Davies.
I'm at PCD Ludo, Ludo.
And thank you for listening, everybody.
Very spooky.
Horrifying.